What do you think of this morphological reversal in Earth evolution?
What's the reversal exactly?
Well, that we're in this decline, that Steiner says we're in this phase of decline of Earth evolution, which means like we're in the dying process, in the old age of the Earth and human evolution in this period.
So when he says the old age, we're kind of like just kind of halfway past, just past a halfway point of the Earth's development as an organism.
Well, yeah, and for him, the mystery of Golgotha was like came at a time when we had, when humanity and the Earth had become most condensed and fallen, and so like, and for that reason, the stars, the speaking of the stars, had gone mute to us. So the divine guidance was like evaporating. But yeah, so like Christ comes to renew that relationship basically. And so it's a cosmic event. And so yeah, we are like in the first chapter after that basically. Well, it's complicated, but yeah, because it doesn't, that whole period of what he calls the fourth post-Atlantean epoch starts at I think 500 BC and ends in 1500 AD. Something, or maybe it's 800 BC, I can't remember.
But what's dying is not the sort of life of the Earth.
Yeah.
What's dying is what we currently think of as the physical, biophysical Earth.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's important to emphasize. Yeah.
So.
Because life, in this picture, life comes from the spirit.
Yeah.
And death returns us to the spirit.
Yeah, death is a creative force in an evolutionary cosmos. It's not
a portal, as he.
It's a portal to the new.
A gate. Yeah.
And so, but from our perspective now, with kind of standard materialistic environmentalism or ecologism, the religion of ecology, however you want to refer to it, because materialism is the default assumption, even if it's like a vibrant relational materialism, there's this delusion, well, I shouldn't be so mean, there's a kind of temptation to think, if we could just be more sustainable, if we could just prolong the biophysical existence of, plants and animals and fungi and the microbiome and all that for a little bit longer, then we'll be good. We can feel like we're good earth stewards or whatever. But we know at the end it's like the sun's gonna swallow the earth and it's all gonna get burnt into a cinder, and it doesn't matter ultimately. Life will end, and that will be the erasure of everything we think we've ever accomplished. And so there's this ultimate, it's a nihilistic metaphysics, even if there's a nice paint job.
Yeah.
And a sense of mission to preserve it for longer, but for what? If it's all just matter.
It's there's a kind of, I feel like Charles Taylor actually talks about this in The Secular Age when he's trying to bring hermeneutic charity to the immanent frame perspective, that there's this self-understanding that's a kind of heroic affirmation of human life and existence, and the idea that the ideal should be to leave Earth, at least some people, so as to colonize other planets to ensure the survival of our species. Which, in this whole situation, that's totally admirable. It seemed like the right thing to do, but if that's not the nature of, if they're wrong about the nature of death, then it can become like a deluded nightmare or something. I don't know.
Yeah. If you think that death and extinction of the physical form is just the end, and there could not possibly be anything beyond that, more than that, then the closest you can come to a kind of transcendence is space travel. It's even if the Earth goes extinct, there's some small chance we might develop the technology for space travel and like self-sustaining biomes, so we could escape the Earth, even escape the solar system, and like just be you could look for another planet or just be a spacefaring species for however long, and like, yeah, maybe it's still eventually like the whole heat death of the universe will kill us off, but at least we can live a little bit more time quantitatively in this imagined projection of years or whatever units of measurement a future civilization decides to use for that. But that's like still such a nihilistic metaphysics at the end of the day, because there's your view of space is that it's just empty black nothingness rather than like living wisdom. And so even if you can escape the Earth and prolong life in some miserable, like no longer earthly form, that's just like, what will humans look like if there's no gravity, or if like they're eating synthetic food for multiple generations? Like we're gonna look very strange after that. And so like, okay, we could prolong life forever, but like towards what end? Like floating in space and consuming in this technological womb we create for ourselves? I don't know. I think it's a fantasy we should reject.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, thinking with like Rick and Richard Tarnas and Stanislav Grof, that it really is like what you're describing. I was just imagining the Saturn-Pluto archetypal combination of the like no exit, like nightmare, and I just started to wonder. I was like, I wonder. I've never looked at this is what Rick's work does. Obviously, the relationship of the outer planets throughout history, but like also kind of looking back with Steiner's whole morphology of epochs, like in the evolution of consciousness, and to see if there's any kind of like patterns that leap out over that long period of time before there was any intellectual history, and specifically more like any kind of change in relationship or the region of the relationships between the outer planets and Saturn and Pluto's, or something very Saturn and Pluto about our epoch.
Yeah. By the time you get back to prehistory, 5 to 10,000 years ago, we actually don't have the ability to accurately, with great precision, predict where the planets will be.
Really?
Yeah, it's a chaotic system. I mean, this is
what I had understood from Steiner's perspective, but I didn't know that like that was that was a widely believed.
If the Homo genus has been around for 3 million years, like we definitely have no idea. We have no way of knowing where the planets were back then. We can have inferences about aspects of what the planets were like, but like the exact positions of the planets, no way. Even 30,000 years ago, it's like we could. You're going to be several degrees off at least, if not more. And with some planets, like Pluto, might have a very chaotic orbit. We don't know. Uranus, look what Uranus is upside down on its axis. So it's like, what happened there? We don't know.
Yeah.
There's a non-zero chance that Mercury could just get flung out of the solar system, right? So like, astrology is real, and the geometry of it is, there are infinities everywhere. Like that if we try to reach too far into the quantitative aspect of it, we'll there's just no ground.
So that means like if we have any aspiration really to know the past, like clairvoyance is necessary. That's basically what Barfield says, or at least that we should be as willing to consider the report of alternative means.
Number is important too.
Yeah.
Clairvoyance.
Well, I think Steiner thinks that as well, but like it's more in a musical way.
It's rhythm.
Rather than the sand way.
Arithmetic.
Yeah.
Not counting grains of sand, but counting notes.
Yeah.
In a melody, or hearing the simultaneous harmony of a chord. And seeing what emergence really means. It's not like you're adding a bunch of things together and you get so much at some point it just becomes magic. It's like no, it's not. It's not about adding more and more. It's about this qualitative harmony that's achieved. It's uncountable.
Monique puts it really well in her book called Harmony, the Heartbeat of Creation. She talks about like thinking with Pythagoras.
Monique Palmier,
yeah. That she uses this phrase stepping down.
Yeah.
And I find that really nice because it shows that there's like an underlying wholeness of what it connection to wholeness that the individuated always has, emerges from.
Yeah.
What?
I heard a hawk. Did you hear that?
Oh yeah.
I saw a meme today someone shared.
Did you see the Trump meme? There is no meme.
The mugshot?
I love you.
That's the meme to end all memes. The Trump mugshot, and it's going to be reused in all these different ways. But no, there was another meme of this like dark being sort of like inside of a sphere poking its fingers out, and each of the fingers was like a little face, and the words were like, this is individuals thinking that they're separate, and then below this big figure was the universe. And so the idea is like we're really all one, and we're all the fingers of this one being, and our sense of individuality is an illusion. And I don't like that very much.
I don't like that either.
I think it's partial because it like reduces the many to the one instead of recognizing that each of the many contains the one.
It reminds me of this image that I came up with when I was in like high school. I was like, reality, it's like an octopus, and it's under the water, and it like sticks its tentacles up out of the water, and they all think that they're separate.
That's good.
But they all have their own unique experience of when and how they came up out of the water and what their lives have been like since it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was my like stoner high school.
That's brilliant. As a high school idea.
I mean,
that's
totally
such an important insight.
Yeah.
But it's partial, right? Because
it's I would say it's not. It doesn't capture the like I have personally like this this feeling of like intensity around like philosophically arguing for the reality of the particular or the individual. I guess I should say the individual or the singular.
Those could all be defined. I mean, particular, individual, singular could be defined
Well, is the
differently.
individual not singular?
Yeah.
And the individual is like a concrete particular?
Concrete universal, you could almost say. I mean,
Well, both.
It's I mean, Hegel's dialectic would be there's the part particular, then the universal, then the synthesis would be the individual. That's how he sees it. But the individual is singular. The individual is unique. The individual is not just universality in an abstract sense, but it somehow embodies universality in a unique form.
It's a symbol of it. It's an icon.
Yeah, but like a unique symbol of the universal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why
preserved.
the octopus picture is not satisfying to me enough.
Right. But in some sense, like the actual physiology of an octopus is such that their brain is, they do have heads, and so there's some cephalization, but I've heard biologists talk about octopuses like octopi. I forget which is actually correct, but that their brain is extended into their arms. More so.
So is ours.
But more so than in mammals.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's just
Interesting.
a higher degree of autonomy in each of the, think about trying to, with some centralized control module, monad, to control 8 arms at one time. It's like you have to grant them some autonomy to navigate the environment with some decision-making ability of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, like there's a global sort of purpose that's ultimately guiding what the arms are, what kind of task they're trying to solve at any given time and place. But as they solve the miniature tasks, like in any given global task, are the arms doing it themselves. It's like, oh, okay, we're trying to get food out of this shell. Okay, well, I'm going to figure it out on my own. I don't need the brain to tell me how to do it.
Yeah.
And our limbs are kind of like that too, to some large extent, but not quite as much. So, you know, there's more to that octopus metaphor in the sense that each of the limbs is kind of verging towards us being an individual in its own right.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of this? This is like esoteric, I guess, but Steiner says that I wonder how this would be received from a impartial scientist of the human nervous system. I don't know what the role would be, what their title would be, a neuroscientist.
Yeah, physiologist.
What they would say to this, but Steiner said there are no motor nerves.
Oh yeah.
There's only nerves of perception, and that the so-called motor nerves are just the nervous system, the nervous system's perceptual, capacity to register perceptually, and that we don't just perceive with our eyes and our nose and our ears, we perceive with our whole body.
Right.
And that Steiner says it's the astral body that does the willing of the movement.
Yeah.
And is facilitated in doing so through the perception of the nervous system.
I guess this point there is that like a materialistic physiology or neurology that says movement can be caused by neurons is imputing...
It's an abstraction.
Well, it's imputing causal power. It's like saying that there's a will, but in a materialistic framework, there can be no such thing. So if you're really going to describe the body as a physical organism, you shouldn't attribute motoricity to it. It's like all just reactive. Yeah. And so if you're going to attribute motoricity to it, you're really describing will, which is an astral power.
It's crazy. The way you pull that out makes it just shows how convoluted it kind of is.
Well, materialism is impossible, so you have to be like importing things.
Whereas like the way Steiner describes it doesn't like forget the fact that we're always like making these descriptions from within the consciousness. Yeah.
Science is only possible because there's an eye, an astral body, and an etheric body, and a physical body. Without the eye and the astral and the etheric, there's no experience, no sensor experience, no thinking, no reflection upon what nature might be doing. It's like science presupposes a soul and a spirit.
Well, this brings us back to Steiner and the decline of the earth, this idea that because he says of this epoch, the consciousness soul epoch, that the emergence of science, the scientific method, scientific revolution are like symptomatic of this development, and so is the mechanistic world picture. That there's this necessity of an objectified outer world as a foil for the eye that can study it and aspire to a kind of objectivity. And Ernest Lear, in this book called Man or Matter or something like that, he was an anthroposophist, but he was also a scientist, and he was talking about like the nervous system, that at this point the nervous system has become emancipated from the body in a way, and so there's a kind of deadening effect that allows for freedom, basically freedom from the kind of atavistic participation in the life of the world, and that this is what has brought about the mechanistic world picture. It is a symptom of that. development, and that it's a kind of like he made the comparison to the salt, like salt that has crystallized. Yeah, it's interesting. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So again, to come back to this idea that like, what does it mean? We're not saying necessarily that it's true, but like just to contemplate Steiner's picture that like we are living in the death phase of the earth, and it had a life phase, and now we're in the death phase, and that's just part of its whole life.
So in some sense, but what we're not saying is that like extractive capitalism and the fossil fuel economy and all these things are okay and justified and should continue. Because to say that the earth is dying is not to say that we need to rush it.
Exactly. That's, I think, the significance of biodynamic agriculture, and Steiner was trying to give like a counterbalance to like keep the death forces from overtaking too soon.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're still talking about many thousands of years.
Yeah. Yes.
When human beings as organs of the earth, important organs of the earth, must maintain the vitality of this organism in order for this spiritual evolutionary process to succeed. So even if we're not ultimately physical beings, and even if the physical earth, the biophysical earth, is not ultimately like not our final destination, we still need to recognize it as a phase of this metamorphosis that should be respected as having intrinsic value and having essential value for the process, as a phase of the process. And like what is accomplished on the earth is essential for what comes next. So it's not like there's no value to the physical, to the biological, to the values achieved by this ecosystem that we call Gaia. I mean, it's a beautiful community, but it's in service of a process which transcends it. In the sense that it's
when it derives its life from something that transcends it.
Yeah. It's a phase in a process.
If you're like more than a materialist.
If you're more than a materialist, but I think we have to be serious about our metaphysics, right? And like think things through to the end. And if there's so many ways that you can be kind of quasi-spiritual, but ultimately you're still materialist in the sense that you think that death and extinction are ultimate ends. And I think you need to be able to see beyond the threshold of death in order to actually embrace anything genuinely spiritual.
That's really part of the deal, or the challenge, I guess, for us. It's like for anybody in their spiritual life, whether they're materialists or not, is like this question of death, like what is death? Yeah.
It's the end of life, the purpose of life, the meaning of life, right? So end in multiple senses, like, but I think we just relate to death so often as like accidentally part of life.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, we could avoid it if we try, if we're careful.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you fucking can't avoid it.
Yeah.
It is the core of life. It's like...
Gosh, I mean, that is what I feel like pop music really definitely...
Yep.
Like, induces...
Consumer culture as a whole is about avoiding, denying, escaping, pretending that death is not inevitable, and putting all of our value and meaning in something ephemeral.
Yeah.
That because we think that this life is all we have. It's like the shrinking of the meaning that's available over the course of human history from like thinking that we're participating in some cosmic drama to nowadays thinking that all that really could ever have any meaning, and it's barely meaningful, is just our individual lives, what we achieve as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, maybe you have kids, or maybe you write a book and it's like affects the future, and that's it. That's all you have, is this sense of really fragile connection to something bigger than yourself that almost seems destined to be forgotten. Like it's because it's just traces of material.
Mm-hmm. It's tragic.
And it's not that's like that time isn't tragic, and that the passage of time and the perpetual perishing and the, you know.
But it's a eucatastrophe.
Yeah, but it's beautiful, right?
Well, it's not just beautiful, it's also good and joyous. There's joy.
Mm-hmm.
There is joy.
And truth?
Yes. There's a happy ending.
Well,
There's a happy ending.
okay, happiness though. What do you mean by happiness?
Joy. Reunion.
I would
Love.
rather live a meaningful life than a happy life. Because I just feel like happiness gets construed
That's
as...
what eucatastrophe means, though. My point is like catastrophe. So what did you mean?
Yeah.
For
It means
Aristotle?
good. It means beneficent. It's
Yes, it's Jupiterian.
yeah. It's
Jupiter.
a celebratory thing, but it's also
Cheers.
not just about pleasure.
No, I
It's
agree.
not just about smiles. It's not just about pleasure. Yeah, it's beyond something hedonic. It's like
Yeah, but also the hedonic is indexed to
it's
it.
inclusive of the hedonic.
It's like how Eros is the lure to the good, like, so like it doesn't amputate these feelings that I'm expressing, you know, like. I feel like that's kind of where we differ a little bit. Like, you stress one, the other, and I stress the other. Yeah, which is important, right? Like, that's how we're complementary.
Yeah, well, you're playing Jupiter, and I'm just worried about Saturn being forgotten.
I'm not forgetting Saturn. I could never forget Saturn. That's why I love Jupiter so much. But Jupiter means nothing without Saturn, so...
No, of course, but Saturn is easy to forget. Saturn is forgetfulness. Saturn is like this sort of...
Oh, isn't my Saturn conjunct your Jupiter?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I feel like I do take a more joyous, humorous even perspective on things that are difficult, and things like limits and things like death. I mean, you're coming around, but I think in prior conversations, my fascination with death has been...
No. When I first moved here, it was all I thought about or talked about.
But it was...
I got sick of it being fetishized.
Yeah, sure.
And I needed the other half.
Who was doing that? Me? Okay.
Me too.